rocpodcasts.com. It's Wednesday night. It's amateur Hammond organ recital night. Okay, take it away, Scutters.
This is an SOS distress call from the mining ship Red Dwarf. The crew is dead, killed by a radiation leak. Luckily, video records of the survivors' attempts to return to Earth still exist. These blokes, Brent and Paul, are ready to tell you all about them. You're listening to Tongue Tied, a Red Dwarf podcast. Stand by for comment and analysis on your favorite episodes of Red Dwarf.
Go, Benny.
Featuring
Boys from the Dwarf,
Brent Johnson.
Hey, smaghead.
And Paul Towsley.
Better make myself look big.
And now, from the drive room, the boys from the Dwarf.
Look out, Sam. The slime's coming home.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Tongue Tied, a Red Dwarf podcast. I'm Paul.
And I'm Brent, and this is our fourth episode where we'll be discussing Series 4 of Red Dwarf, which aired from February 14th to March 21st, 1991. The stories in this season are
Camille, DNA, Justice, White Hole, Dimension Jump, and Meltdown.
Hey, I wanted to tell you, Paul, well, first of all, how you been?
I've been great. One of the cool things that happened since the last time we recorded is I took part in this local podcast festival and saw about 10 different podcasters from Rochester all sit down and perform their podcasts in front of a live audience. And that was a very unique experience.
That's cool. Yeah. I saw some of the pictures. I haven't heard any of the audio yet.
Yeah, the audio just came out. I've got to do a little bit of editing, and then I'm going to throw that up on the feed at the Paul Towsley Show. So everyone can listen for that. It was a visual show at the same time, and we weren't the only podcasters to take advantage of the fact that we were in front of an audience, but I think it comes across. And there's a video, too. I'll make sure to share with everybody as well.
Oh, that's cool. So you actually had an audience standing around listening while you were doing your show?
A few people, yeah. I mean, it wasn't a huge audience, but there was definitely people, and we got to play off them a little bit, so that was a good time.
That's cool.
Yeah, what have you been up to? Not
a whole lot. I think last time we were talking about I was watching that Survivor show, and I finished that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was all right. To not know that they were going off the air, at least I don't think they did. And they kind of wrapped it up okay. But, again, it's one of those shows you watch once and you never watch again because it's not that exciting. But I was listening to your Towsley TARDIS last time where you did Back to the Future and Bill and Ted. And I was sitting there thinking that I don't know if you remember this, but when Bill and Ted's Bogus Adventure came out, Bogus Journey came out, whatever year that was, 91, 92. I remember watching the live MTV movie premiere special for that. And they had Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves on there. And they had them scheduled to come out, and it was totally live. I mean, they didn't break for a commercial, and live cameras everywhere. Keanu Reeves wouldn't come out.
Oh, no.
Huh?
Was he embarrassed?
Oh, I'll tell you what he was in a second. But I'm sure you can find it on YouTube or something. I have it on videotape somewhere because I was taping it that night because I was like a huge fan of that stuff. So I have it somewhere, but they kept saying, oh, he's coming out, he's coming out. They even had to the point where Alex Winter went backstage and the camera followed him. And then went back and Keanu Reeves was just sitting on the couch. Dude, he was so stoned out of his gourd. And he didn't even know where he was pretty much.
Close your eyes, Keanu, or you'll bleed to death. Look out, boy.
Yeah, and at first I thought, is this a setup? Is this just them messing with us on TV, but this was before reality TV and all that stuff. I'm pretty sure it was real. I mean, it looked real. I mean, it looked like some of the not the stars, but some of the main people that were there looked kind of pissed off, and so I'm pretty sure it was real.
That's a great story. I'll have to go find that. I'm interested to find anything else in the Bill and Ted world, so I'm interested to check that out on the YouTube. We did receive some feedback. Our friend from the UK, Shane Poole, wrote in. We were having a discussion the last time about the voiceovers and whether the studio audience could hear the voiceovers. And Shane set us straight by writing in. We had a little conversation, and this is the paraphrase of that. And he was saying that it was recorded in front of a live studio audience, but the voices were dubbed over the scenes in post-production. And then for the final edit, the dubbed voices were then played to a small audience, and they provided the laugh track. So that's the answer to that question, getting a little bit more in depth about the production of Red Dwarf. Yeah. So what do you think? Let's get started.
All right, let's get started with our first episode of Series 4 called Camille.
It's the old story. Droid meets droid. Droid becomes chameleon. Droid loses chameleon. Chameleon turns into blob. Droid gets blob back again. Blob meets blob. Blob goes off with blob. And droid loses blob, chameleon, and droid. How many times have we seen that story?
Which aired February 14th, 1991. Written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor and directed by Ed Bye. Lister breaks Crichton's programming and teaches him to lie, which leads him to disobey Rimmer and meet the love of his life. And so does Rimmer. And so does Lister. And so does Cat. So originally this one was scheduled to air later in the series, but it was pushed to the beginning for a couple of reasons. First of all, a couple of the episodes dealt with war, and since the Gulf War was going on at the time, those two were pushed to the end of the season. And also, this episode had a bit of romance in it, so it happened to fall on Valentine's Day.
Valentine. Okay.
That's the other reason they picked that, yeah.
I got the romance kind of theme happening several times here in this series, because it seems like instead of each of the guys getting their own romantic partner, they seem to have one partner that all of them are kind of competing over, and this episode is a great example of that as well.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Again, another one of those concepts that you don't see coming, because the first few minutes of the episode you think, oh, Crichton's found another mechanoid like him, until he comes in and Rimmer sees, and then it's a girl like Rimmer. So everybody sees their, like, the companion that they most desire. And of course that leads into my favorite scene where it's the cat's turn and he's like, oh, where's she at? And he walks in and it's himself.
Hi, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And one of the other things that I really love is the conversation between Camille and Crichton, and they're talking about, love and machine code. And then Crichton explains to Camille that, she's got to come and meet his friends. You'll like them. Well, maybe one of them. And Dave has absolutely the best pickup lines. So he wins the prize as far as the pickup lines. He's like, I'm the surgeon. Just go ahead and take off your clothes.
Yeah, he had some good ones. And
then Rimmer's got a nice line with the tentacle, because of course Camille turns into a big green blob about 3/4 of the way through the episode, which you'd almost think that would be the end of the episode, but they really kind of draw it out a little bit more and play on the Crichton Camille love affair a little bit more.
Yeah, there were. Well, first of all, that blob. I don't know if you've ever seen Creature from the Pit, the Tom Baker story.
Of course.
Yeah, that's exactly what that looked like, but a smaller version.
Right. Which great special effects. So I'm very satisfied. Even the characters when they're appearing with themselves in this particular episode with Cat meeting Cat, there's none of the awkwardness that there was in series 1 or 2 concerning like the duplication of characters on screen. It's very seamless.
Yeah, it really looked real there. You couldn't see any of the overlays or anything like that. This one also had a lot of callbacks to Casablanca, which I'm sorry to be the worst movie buff of all time, but I've never seen that. I've heard so much about it over the years, I feel like I've seen it. But, the scene where Crichton takes Camille to the movies to see Casablanca, and then the end of it is pretty much a recreation of the final scene, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it is. And they're even, I don't know, there was another episode earlier where they're talking about how could you remake Casablanca, like the the futuristic version was the one that, the definitive version where, from our point of view, how could you possibly recreate Casablanca? Exactly.
Right.
One of my favorites also at the very top of the episode, Lister's trying to teach Crichton how to lie and how to tell off Rimmer, and Crichton just can't get any more out than smee he. And then he puts up the cue cards even. He's just trying to get him to say Smeghead, and he's got the little cue cards that say Smeghead, and that's great.
Also, we see the introduction of the Gelf, which is genetically engineered life forms, which will return a couple more times later in the series.
They will be back. That's Camille. That's one of the good episodes in this season. There's only a few. I wasn't as big a fan of this season as any of the other ones, and of course that'll bring the hate mail coming down the line. So if you want to send us hate mail, go ahead and send it to tonguetiedpodcast@yahoo.com.
Excellent.
Up next, DNA.
What is it? Best guess? Some kind of DNA modifier designed to alter organic life at its molecular level. This would explain our triple-headed friend back there.
So what does it do?
Every single cell in your body contains DNA, which is a series of genetic instructions telling your body how to grow. It's like a small computer program that chooses the color of your eyes, tells your nose what shape to be, designates your sex, your height, everything, even your lifespan. This machine simply rewrites the DNA program.
So this machine can transform any living thing into any other living thing by altering its molecular structure.
Precisely.
It turned Lister into a chicken.
So it seems.
Question is, can we turn him back again?
The question is, do we want to?
Which aired February 21st, 1991, written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, and directed by Ed Bye. Cat wreaks havoc on a DNA-altering machine and accidentally turns Crichton into a human and Lister into a chicken. So this one's kind of interesting because they start out, they find a supposedly alien spacecraft, which of course is human because we don't have many aliens here in this Red Dwarf series. And automatically Rimmer believes that it's aliens that are trying to bring back Glenn Miller. We don't want him. You keep him. And then, of course, they go through the cat obviously is an idiot and can't operate any machinery. So he just keeps pushing buttons until Lister becomes a chicken and then a hamster. And then, of course, it all is set straight and Crichton is turned into a human. And that's very interesting because then we get to see him without his makeup on and without his costume on. And that's all very interesting. He's got a very expressive face.
Yeah, he does. Not long after that leads into what's my favorite scene was where he's asking Lister about, now look, I've got this power outlet. I got nowhere to plug it in. Every time I put it in there, it just falls out. He's like, well, that's not what that is. Well, my nipples don't work. Well, what do you mean? Well, on my old machine, the left nipple got FM radio or something like that.
And he can't have split screen and he can't have zoom in eyeballs.
Right, zoom in eyeballs, and then the whole thing about the double Polaroid.
So there's not a whole lot of conflict in this episode because then the conflict is, what is Crichton? Is Crichton going to be more happy as a machine or a person? And they decide, okay, we're going to switch him back. But then of course it takes a serious left turn, and they create the Vindaloo Beast.
Of course, lager. The only thing that can kill a Vindaloo.
Last week, I introduced my youngest, who's 17, to Jaws. I bought it on Blu-ray a few months ago, but I haven't watched it. And apparently, he'd never seen it before, so we watched it. So a couple of days later, I saw this one, which contained the Vindaloo Beast at the end. And how did Lister get rid of it? He threw a can of lager into his mouth and blew it up, just like Roy Scheider did in Jaws with the oxygen tank.
And that's my favorite scene, ladies and gentlemen. I love the whole stuff with the Vindaloo Beast, how they try so hard to make it look menacing, but it really just looks stupid and silly and, poor lighting. And then little mini RoboCop Lister decides, lager's the only thing that can defeat a Vindaloo. And he happens to throw it right into its mouth and blasts it with the gun.
I was watching the behind-the-scenes video that's on the disc, on the second disc, and Craig Charles was saying that scene where it blows up and part of it hits him and he falls over backwards. He said that actually happened because they shot that stuff out of some kind of little cannon or something, and it actually knocked him over. He lost his balance and fell over, so that was real.
Awesome. I like it. Cool.
And what did you think of the spare heads scene?
I'm very interested. I should have read up on this a little bit beforehand, but who was playing those? Was that all, Crichton playing the same character, or are there three different people in Crichton's mask?
No, it was him.
Okay.
Yeah, it was all him, and they shot it like 3 different times, and then they said they used split screen for all 3, and then they wiped what was underneath the shelf, so it looks like there's space underneath.
And of course, then the hand does the 2-finger salute.
Next up, Justice.
Yeah, there was other things as a kid, though. Things I didn't get caught for.
Like what?
Well, there was this one time at this hotel.
Oh, lots of people take towels from hotels, sir.
I took the bed. I went to knock the window to my mate outside. I was renting this flat, you see. It was unfurnished.
You mean to say you went to a hotel and stole the bed?
Stole the entire room.
Absolutely despicable. You're a common thief.
I'm not making excuses, but everyone was doing it. I wasn't strong enough to go against the flow.
I would not like to be in your boots right now, buddy.
Why? What do you think's going to happen to me?
Oh, don't worry about it, sir. I'm sure they're not going to be interested in some minor misdemeanor you committed as an adolescent over 3 million years ago.
Seriously, Crichton, do you reckon?
Boy, I'm really getting the hang of this lie mode. That was totally convincing, wasn't it?
Which aired February 28th, 1991, written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, and directed by Ed Bye. To discover the contents of an escape pod, the crew visit Justice World, where every crime committed is inflicted on its perpetrator. And Rimmer's in big trouble.
Of course, this episode starts out with space mumps.
Yeah, that was pretty gross.
Pretty good makeup, actually.
Yeah, it was. And the part where it finally burst, I saw that was made up of custard and some kind of pickle something. And I was like, oh, that's just nasty.
It was super nasty. And Kat was extremely traumatized by that.
Yeah. This is probably my favorite concept of the entire season. The fact that if you try to attack someone, you're attacked yourself.
Yeah, or light the bed sheets on fire and you get lit on fire yourself. I think flushing out of that idea would have to be my favorite scene of this whole episode. The battle scene at the end where the mechanoid shoots Lister, but then he ends up getting shot and he stabbed in the head, and then of course Kat comes along and hits him over the head with a shovel and immediately passes out.
Yeah, that was my favorite scene too. That whole fight scene at the end. Also, I mean, you'd think that if the killer was on his way to Justice World, then he'd know that he wouldn't be able to attack Lister at the end.
He's just that crazed.
I guess, and that's the way they get him at the end. It does not compute when he tries to kill him and he's getting hurt himself.
And here's another episode where all the guys are drooling over supposedly a woman that's inside the stasis pod. But of course it isn't. They're all fighting over who's going to ask her out on a date. And it turns out to be a crazed mechanoid android person, which isn't even the main conflict of this episode. The main conflict of the episode is Rimmer's guilt and how he's kind of convicted himself to suffer the consequences and serve 9,000 years in jail.
Yeah.
And, he kind of did himself in, and of course then they try to get him off and they have an appeal, and he's the one that's objecting all of the horrible things they're saying about him. I think Crichton says, "I'm just trying to prove you're a dork." And did we get Rimmer's name before this? Did we get Judas Rimmer before this?
I think so. I mean, I always knew that, so I'm pretty sure they said that before, like series 1 or 2. It was a while back, if I'm not mistaken.
We are watching lots of these in a very quick amount of time. So
yes, exactly right.
Tales meld together.
Yeah, especially when you've seen them all a lot. They kind of mix and match there in my head.
I think it's fun to see these, and focus on the particular seasons and kind of put some continuity between the production value and the story as it progresses. Of course, we didn't even talk about the end of the last episode. They never changed Crichton back. And, of course, he's a mechanoid again at the beginning of this episode. So that's one of those Simpsons moments where everything that happened is just magically restored to the way that it's supposed to be at the end of the episode.
Yeah, there's a little something in there that says, he wasn't happy with not being able to do the things that he could do as a robot, and so he wanted to go back. But they never showed it. I guess it's one of those off-screen things, or it could have been something that they filmed that they maybe got cut out.
Yeah,
because I know there's one coming up in Dimension Jump that was filmed but never aired. When we get to that, but I wanted to ask you. This one had a really weird ending to me. Lister is just like rambling on and falls into a hole, and the others just look down in the hole and like, oh, thank God for that, or something, and close the lid, and there's no laughter or anything. It was kind of weird. What's that?
And then it's just over.
Yeah.
I found that kind of odd too.
Yeah, I mean, there was no laughter, no applause. It just ended. It was just kind of weird. It didn't make a lot of sense.
And you'd think, I don't know, there's always got to be a punchline, doesn't there? I mean, it's kind of the way that they end episodes is with a punchline.
Oh, God, what's this? Oh, relax, sir. It's just a mind probe.
Hang on a minute. What's a mind probe?
Oh, the computer was just searching our minds, presumably for any evidence of criminal activity, sir.
What do you mean, criminal activity?
No, I wouldn't worry about it, sir. It's just a routine clearance procedure.
Yeah, but when you say criminal activity, what do you mean by criminal activity? I mean, how criminal do you mean by criminal?
What are you bleating on about, Lister?
Just define criminal activity for me, that's all.
Well, imagine a situation where someone had committed a crime and concealed it from the law. The mind probe would be able to uncover that crime and sentence that person accordingly.
Why did no one tell me this before I put the Smeggen boots on?
Listy, is that a small sewage plant you're carrying in your trousers?
Up next, White Hole.
Whatever it is you're suggesting, forget it.
But the entire ship is running on emergency battery power only. With the oxygen recycler and minimal heating and lighting, I estimate that Lister and the cat have approximately 2 months left. Without your drain on the power, they might last 6. I'm sorry, sir.
Sorry? Why are you sorry?
Well, the Space Corps Directive 195 clearly states that in an emergency power situation, a hologrammatic crew member must lay down his life in order that the living crew members might survive.
Yes, but Rimmer Directive 271 states just as clearly, no chance, you metal bastard.
Which aired March 7th, 1991, written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, and directed by Ed Bye and Paul Jackson. Holly's intelligence is dramatically increased to an IQ of 12,368, but it decreases her life expectancy to 3 minutes, which could leave the crew stranded for the rest of their lives. This one had some pretty cool sci-fi stuff going on here, but we have to start with my favorite scene, which is right at the beginning, because they have resurrected the talking toaster.
Anyone like any toast?
Look, I don't want any toast. And he doesn't want any toast. In fact, no one around here wants any toast. Not now, not ever. No toast.
How about a muffin?
Oh, muffins. We don't like muffins round here. We want no muffins, no toast, no tea cakes, no buns, baps, baguettes or bagels, no croissants, no crumpets, no pancakes, no potato cakes, and no hot cross buns, and definitely no Smeggen flapjacks.
Ah, so you're a waffle man.
Right. I know that was your favorite.
Yeah. Oh, God. And it's Dave's favorite, too, because as soon as it starts talking again, Dave goes off on this huge rant. And he's just pissed off because every time the toaster wants to give him something, he's just like, no, why do you talk to me? Why do you want to give me these cooked bread things? Why do you want to give me bagels? Why do you want to give me waffles? I don't want toast. Why are you even talking to me? And, Dave's probably the one that bought the damn thing in the first place.
Yeah, and I think he had destroyed it, and Crichton put it back together.
That was thousands of pieces in the garbage hold, and Crichton just happened to find all those pieces, decided that it was a toaster, and decided to put it back together. And of course, the talkie toaster has a soothing, cool jazz DJ sound to everything that it announces.
There's something I never noticed until this time. The voice of the toaster, not the old toaster, but the toaster that's in this one, is David Ross, who was the original Crichton from season 2.
Oh, cool.
If you don't watch any other special feature on this DVD, make sure you see the behind the scenes of White Hole this episode, because there are some really funny stories on there. Ed Bye had caught a virus and attempted to direct, but he kept getting sick, so the original producer, Paul Jackson, was brought in to direct the rest of the episode in his place. So apparently Paul Jackson garnered a lot of fear and respect from everyone, from the crew to the cast, and everybody was on their best behavior. And of all days to be late, Danny John Jules is late and gets a tongue lashing in front of the entire crew.
Oh, no.
It's a really funny feature. Chris Berry talks about how suddenly there were twice the crew on the set and doing like death-defying suspensions from the roof, and hey, you need a light down here, governor, and all this stuff. It's some really funny stuff. Also, watching that, I learned that Mike Tucker did a lot of the models and the effects on some of these stories this season, and Doctor Who fans may recognize his name from some of the new series where he's done a lot of effects work.
So that like some of the model stuff in the new series, or is it like CG stuff in the new series?
I'm not sure. I think mostly the model stuff, but yeah, he worked on here first, and now he's on Doctor Who.
Nice. All right, so Holly gets restored. Her IQ gets restored. Of course, they have the funny gag where they're saying that she counts by banging her head against the screen. I've always loved that. And then, she gets an IQ of 68 and her one eye is crossed and she looks dumb. But then she's restored to supercomputer, and then they switch over to the hologram Holly, which is awesome. I love that effect. It should be used more frequently, but it's just not the way that the show's done. So I can see why.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. She looked different. She looked more intelligent because her hair was slicked back or something.
Yeah. And then there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of consistency about the conflict here, because they have some trouble, like, first of all, just operating the ship because Holly shuts herself off. And then, like, all of a sudden that is solved and they start getting time dilations and stuff like that. So that's an excuse to do some more special effects and do the Funhouse mirror stuff and speed up the voices and slow them down and that kind of stuff. So that's in there. And then they decide that, okay, well, the best way to fix this is we're going to shoot a planet into the white hole to fix it. And that really kind of draws out the rest of the episode and exactly how are we going to do this? Because all of a sudden, Starbug has access to thermonuclear weapons.
They leave it all into the hands of Lister's pool shooting ability.
And then he has one too many, of course, and he pulls off an awesome trick shot with these planets careening all over this binary star system until they like bounce off of each other and finally solve the problem. And I guess time gets rewritten because everything just fades out, and that leads off to the final scene where then Crichton realizes that time is being rewritten so he can say whatever he wants. And that was a good close to this episode. So I appreciated that, and I liked that, yes, he's a mechanoid, he has to do what he's told, but when things have been cocked up enough that he has some freedom, he can still tell off Rimmer, and it's all good.
Yeah, I like that they started that at the very first of the season in Camille, and they actually stuck to it. And now he's able to break his programming a little bit and say what he wants to, and it wasn't one of those things that got reset at the end of Camille. I mean, they've kind of kept it.
One of the more successful running gags, yeah.
Computer senility. It's such a weird condition.
I know. I had a mechanoid friend once who suffered from this same affliction. His name was Gilbert, but he preferred it if people called him Ramesses Niblick III. Kerplunk, kerplunk, whoops, where's my thribble? A sad case.
Next up, Dimension Jump.
You wanted to see me, Bongo?
Ever heard of a thing called the dimension theory of reality?
Doesn't that run along the lines that there is an infinite number of parallel universes where every possibility exists?
It's along those lines, yeah. The basic tenet states that for every decision that's made, the alternative decision is played out in another reality. So the lab boys have come up with a drive that can break the speed of reality.
Those boffins have hammered together a crate that can cross dimensions? When do I launch?
It's a one-way ticket, Ace. There's no coming back.
I'm free at 1500.
You do realize this is a prototype. There's no way of knowing if it'll even get there.
Where's there exactly?
You'll be transported to an alternative reality, a reality where there's another Arnold Rimmer. Some decision was made at some point in your life where he went one way and you went the other. You might find he's quite different to you.
Sounds like quite a caper.
You'll do it?
I'm a test pilot in the Space Corps, Bongo. It's my job to do it.
which aired March 14th, 1991, written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, and directed by Ed Bye. Expert Daredevil test pilot Ace Rimmer crosses over into our dimension and meets his alternative self in Arnold Judas Rimmer. Man, is he disappointed. Ace Rimmer is one of my favorite characters in this whole series. What a guy.
What a guy.
What a guy. I guess it's because you've seen our Rimmer as a coward for so long that it's nice to see him as a hero for once. I was watching today in my car, actually, the behind the scenes for this, and they interviewed Chris Berry, and he was saying, before they wrote this, he was like, you know, it would be really nice if just for once Rimmer would just have a, you know, I'm tired of being a jerk like in every episode. Could you just kind of write one that where I'm sort of a hero? You know, it's not really a big deal, but you know, if you kind of get around to it, that would be great. And so he got his wish in this story.
And it really kind of translates over to everybody too, because this is the first episode that everybody gets to play another character, because the first scene has yes, Ace Rimmer, but it also has Lister Cat and Crichton all playing other characters that are all kind of worshiping Ace Rimmer. And that had to be fun for the guys because they've been playing the same character now for 4 years, 4 series, and they got to step outside that character a little bit and do something different and be the same people under different circumstances.
Right, and Holly too. We finally get to see her from the neck down now.
All right. So one of my favorite lines, the Ace Rimmer catchphrase actually is,
"Look me a kipper. I'll be back for breakfast."
Yeah, he was total opposite of Rimmer. And just watching those two interact was pretty cool because he was just like shocked that Rimmer was such a coward. And
he wanted to give Rimmer the benefit of the doubt every time. And then every time our Rimmer disappointed him, just excessively disappointed him. And then my favorite lines, I hope you pulled these, has to do with the cat being delirious. They crashed the Starbug. The cat's leg got crushed, and he was bleeding all over his clothes, which of course clashed with the colors that he was wearing, and that was traumatic enough to him. And then as he got more and more delirious, the things that came out of his mouth were hilarious.
Green anoraks with furry collars. They're great.
Oh, sir, he's delirious.
Oh, rubber trousers held down with bicycle clips. Wow.
Yeah, just naming out different types of fashion and accessories.
Yeah, rubber pants is one of the things I remember, and sock suspenders.
I love the end credits of this one too, where the theme is done in the style of Rimmer's favorite Hammond organ music.
Yeah, I've got that written down too. So we got a special end for this one, and we got a special end for the next episode also.
That's right.
Yeah. So this is not the last time we're going to see Ace Rimmer either, as far as I can tell, right?
That's right.
Comes back. Keep your ears open, ladies and gentlemen. We'll get some more of Ace Rimmer. Of course, there's like that Star Wars-esque crawl that comes in here too. So we have Ace searching the multiverse for another Rimmer that's even more pathetic than the one that he just met, and he's having a hell of a time doing it.
I don't know if I had a favorite scene in this one. I did think it was fun the first time I saw this to see how each actor was portrayed in the parallel universe like you were talking about. That was interesting. But maybe the funniest scene in this one to me was where Rimmer was given a slideshow to Crichton and all those silly pictures of him dressed up, and Crichton is just sitting there like in a stone cold daze.
And you think of all the people that Crichton would actually play along with it, but of course he doesn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now our last story, Meltdown.
Could someone tell me what's going on here?
Who are these people? They're not wax droids.
Wax droids?
Of course, this whole place, the entire complex, is a colossal wax droid theme park. See, prehistoric world. That must be where we materialized on either side of it. Villain world and hero world.
But I thought wax droids were programmed to repeat a simple sequence of routines over and over again.
Well, they must have broken their programming, and now they're running amok.
You see, we've been left here all alone for millions of years.
We learned to break our program. And we've been fighting this idiotic, futile war ever since.
Which aired March 21st, 1991, written by Rob Grant and Doug Naylor, and directed by Ed Bye. Crichton uses a prototype, Matter Paddle, and transports the crew to a nearby planet where Hitler has taken over and must fight the good forces of Gandhi, Einstein, Marilyn Monroe, and Elvis. Thank you very much. I gotta say, Elvis was my favorite part of this whole episode. Whoever did the Elvis impersonator stole the show on this episode.
Definitely.
He knocked it out of the park and just did all the right moves and all the right affectations, and he was really the star of this episode. I would love to know, and I don't know if this was part of the special features, but where those big bird dinosaur puppets came from, because I'm sure that's just lifted footage from some other like horrible Daikaizaku Japanese monster movie.
Yeah, there was an interview that I saw today with one of the effects guys, and he's like, I have no idea where that came from. I don't know who lifted that. Totally denied all of it because it looks so bad, and it was totally lifted from some kind of Japanese Godzilla movie or something. I don't know, but
Crichton's down in the hangar deck and just happens to find this transmat. Well, I guess it's not a transmat, a matter transmitter that happens to just look like a kid's like play toy. You know, the kind that would have like, you know, beeping and flashing lights and all that kind of stuff. Maybe kind of like Simon, but not really like Simon. I don't know. Yeah. And they introduce another sci-fi thing here, which is kind of cool, which they deconstruct Rimmer a little bit more by showing us the light bead.
Yeah, this is the one that introduces his light beam, which will become a major plot device later on. But Series 4 is pretty good, not one of the greatest, but this episode is by far my favorite this year.
I agree with you there.
I can't tell you how many times I've seen it, and it still kills me. Like, nonstop laughs all the way through. I love the scene where Lister and Kat are in Hitler's office, and they jump, and they think they've escaped, but really they're on top of his desk. And then they do it again, and then they're in his fireplace.
Then they get fucked up, and they're talking about what's going to happen, and the Kat's like, tell me what's going to happen. I can take it. And it's like, it could be torture, and he starts crying.
What are those guys doing out there? They're building something. What?
Oh, nothing. Just a sculpture, modern art job, like the kind you get in shopping malls.
What's it made of?
Wood. It's a sort of inverted L shape in wood.
Does it have a kind of rope motif?
There's a sort of noosey theme to it, yeah.
It's gallows, right? Look, if it's gallows, say it's gallows. I can take it.
Okay, it's gallows.
They're building gallows behind us.
Look, man, don't panic. We're going to escape.
And then, of course, we don't see any of the action. It's all told to us by Dave looking out the window. But the baddies all line up, and they present a firing squad.
Yeah, that's my favorite scene, where they're in the cell, and Lister looks out the window, and he sees Winnie the Pooh.
What are they doing?
They're just lining up in some kind of firing squad. Whoa, hang on. Someone's being brought out. They're tying him to a stake.
It's Winnie the Pooh? What? Winnie the Pooh, I swear.
He's refusing the blindfold.
They're tying Winnie the Pooh to the stake?
That's something no one should ever have to see.
Yeah, just the look on his face. He acted that so well. Like, he really saw it, like he just sold. I just saw Winnie the Pooh get shot.
Yeah.
Firing squad of wax figure dummies that have a, score to settle.
There are a couple of times in this episode, including that scene, where Craig Charles is trying as hard as he can to keep it together. That scene and the scene where Caligula comes in and keeps slapping him with his glove.
Yeah, there's a lot of times in the whole series where you can just tell that they are doing everything they can to stay in character until someone yells cut so they can just crack up. I really liked Rimmer's speech also. He's been living for this moment his whole life where he actually gets to command troops in battle. And he has this long, convoluted speech about how he's going to teach these, pacifists and religious figures all to become warriors. And you know what? His strategy in the end is actually pretty darn good because he uses them as a diversion and sends the, commando squad of, is it the Queen Mother and Crichton into the Nazi office to take them all out? Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how Lord of the Rings finished, right?
But yeah, that scene where he's lining them up and just tearing them all down, that is just so funny. And he's like giving hell to Gandhi, and it gets in this one guy's face. Is like, "What you gonna do, boy?" Good stuff. He's got Gandhi doing like 50 push-ups.
So then they win the battle by melting all the wax figures, and it happens to be all the wax figures, both good and bad. And that's kind of a letdown because now we don't have all these, historical figures that they can play off of, because there was a whole lot of them in this that each had their own little affectations, their own little lines and stuff like that to deliver, and it was a good time. But then, the maybe the letdown that's at the end of this is completely made up for by the Elvis, the Elvis theme song at the end, having Elvis sing the Cold Outside theme at the end here. I love that.
Yeah, that was awesome.
So we'll probably end this episode with that theme. If your thoughts are the same as mine, I'd have to say that they are, because I think we've chosen the same favorite moments for at least 3 of these episodes this season.
Well, that's it for Series 4. Production-wise, it's similar to Series 3, but the episodes this year spend a lot less time in their quarters and more time on another ship or on a planet or in the bowels of Red Dwarf. That was one major change this season.
All right, so Series 4 didn't really float my boat as much as Series 3 did, but, the Meltdown really kind of made up for that. Meltdown's a great episode, and definitely something to show. If you show people Red Dwarf and they dig it, then this would be another episode to just pull out and be like, okay, so if you dig Red Dwarf and you're on board with what's going on, you have to see the craziness of this episode, Meltdown.
Coming up next month, demons, angels, and the almighty evil that is Mr. Flibble. Say goodbye, Paul.
Goodbye, Paul.
Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to Tongue Tied, a Red Dwarf podcast. Red Dwarf, the song Tongue Tied, and all associated material are trademarks of Grant Naylor Productions. No infringement is intended. You can email the podcast at tonguetiedpodcast@yahoo.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tonguetiedpodcast. And follow us on Twitter at tonguetiedpod. For the boys from the Dwarf, this is Paul Towsley saying,
Kadabble, diggle, doggle, niggle, foggle, nibble, nay. I'm trying to say I'm tongue-tied, tongue-tied, whenever you are near me. I'm mummy, 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 whenever.
She's quite something, isn't she, sir?
She's enchanting.
You think so?
She's got everything. Style, taste, poise. She's absolutely lovely.
Oh, I'm so glad you think so, sir. I don't mind telling you, I think there's some romance in the air.
You sly old dog, Crichton. I think you're right.
Oh, sure, her nose is a little loose, but to me, that's just cute.
I'll tell you something. She's so like my sister-in-law, Janine, it's untrue.
Camille looks like your sister-in-law? What happened? Was she involved in some kind of horrific car accident?
Go, Crichton.
We found something, sir.
Yeah?
I think it's one of the crew. A hideously malformed triple-headed skeleton with putrefied flesh hanging from it. It fell through a river as we opened the lift door.
Is he all right?
I believe he's just discovered what shirt tails are for. All right, Crichton, you don't have to make me sound like a complete cowardly gimboid git. I'm fine now. So, shall I cancel the order to find your mother? Is that thing still on?
Thank you very much.
ROCpodcasts.com.